Can we just admit that Bluesky is a catastrophic failure? That's the headline from this Reddit thread. And fine, I'll admit that Bluesky is a catastrophic failure. Bluesky is basically trying to bring back the worst of Twitter 2016, 2017, the cancel culture, the outrage, people constantly being offended by something, the digital lynch mobs, all of these things that were terrible then and they're terrible now and they look really dated now. They all exist on Bluesky. And a lot of people left X because they did not like the direction that Elon Musk was taking X in, but I still prefer it to Bluesky. So let's talk about this. Actually, what's prompting the video was George Broussard. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He is actually the co-founder of Apogee Games. He's known for Duke Nukem, and he loves adventure games, according to his bio. But he said that Bluesky has flatlined at 38 million users. Every number here is red, and every graph is now in a slow decline. And we've talked about there being obvious problems at Bluesky, that they got rid of Jay Graber as the CEO. Now, she didn't get ousted from the company, but she definitely got demoted at the company. She's now working in tech or something. I forget what they created a whole new position for her, but she was the CEO. They brought another interim CEO in, and then almost immediately they got another cash infusion of like $100 million. And that's how this company survives, because they're not charging people anything. Unlike X, they haven't figured out that you need to charge people for your service, because nobody's willing to pay for Bluesky. And the audience on Bluesky are basically the people who didn't want to pay for Twitter or X, and they're over there now, just stinking up the place. And it's the same group of people. I've talked about this before. It's the same group of people that started on like Livestream and Tumblr, and they basically migrate from platform to platform. And it's always a free platform. It's always a platform that they can abuse the moderation. They come in, they try to take control of it. And then as soon as they start to pivot to a pay model or a paywalled model, they throw a fit and they leave and they go someplace else, and they stink that place up too. So Bluesky and they open the doors for them. They basically, Bluesky sold itself as being an alternative to X. People didn't want to be on X because of the politics. They don't like Elon Musk's politics. They felt that X was skewing more right, which I would agree. I would agree with that. It is. But, having a left-wing echo chamber is not exactly a good look either. In fact, those people can be absolutely fucking vicious, as we have learned. It's those, and they will cancel their own. They will eat their own. They were going after Mark Hamill for doing a voice in a Christian movie. They went after R.I.P. Rob Reiner because he stepped out of line. And these guys are, relatively far left. And it still wasn't enough to appease the Bluesky cancel culture mob. Jack Dorsey started Bluesky as a side project from Twitter. He wanted to create something better than Twitter, and all they did was recreate the worst of Twitter, and he noped out. That's how bad things are. And I don't think Bluesky is going to last. I don't see any scenario where it can last unless it gets absorbed into another company or they do a hard pivot as to what it is. Now, originally, my understanding was it was supposed to be a decentralized, self-hosted social media platform. So you could basically have your own personal Bluesky, which would be like your own personal Twitter, and you could install it on your own server and run it just like, like a WordPress site or something like that, or like a forum. And you would be responsible for all the management and maintenance of that, and all of the moderation. And it wouldn't be centralized. You could keep it small. Got 100 people on here that think like I do, so we're not going to have any chuds. You know what I'm saying? Like that sort of thing. And I think that would be incredibly useful. But that's not what it is now. It's like I said, it's just a much, much worse version of Twitter. So we're going to take a look at the numbers. And the numbers are pretty shocking. Well, not really if you've been paying attention. But look, at best, the site has flatlined. At worst, it's on a massive decline. So let's talk about this. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. This is Kneon, this is CLOWNFISH TV, and this is another video about the absolute shit show known as Bluesky. So here's a couple of different opinions, right? This is coming from Y Combinator 6 months ago. I don't understand how Bluesky is going to continue to exist past 2026 based on the sharply declining usage, their headcount, and the amount of funding they've taken. And that's before they got rid of Jay Graber. It has apparent value propositions past the social network, but none of those use cases are visibly taking off, and none of them appear to be monetizable. Yeah, in fact, they talked about monetizing. People freaked out. They talked about paywalling content. People freaked out. You know, they want a free platform that they can stink up just like Twitter. And Twitter had like no value. Like Elon Musk massively overpaid for Twitter. And that's a lawsuit. That's a whole thing. Because it wasn't worth it. There were a lot of bot accounts on there. They said the social network itself is what will be evaluated when they go out for more funding. And I don't see how you can raise it all for a social network in 2026 with flat numbers, let alone the declining numbers Bluesky actually has. This person says, I've been dual wielding Twitter and Bluesky for about a year. And anecdotally, we've hit a point where the engagement and volume of stuff I see on Bluesky is lower than I was getting on Mastodon. Earlier on, there was some truth to the idea that Twitter had a much larger audience, but you get better engagement on Bluesky. I now get better engagement on Twitter. I can see people I'd followed into Bluesky moving back to Twitter. I have no idea what's going to happen, but I'm curious to hear a coherent story about how Bluesky isn't cooked. Yeah, this person said sharply declining usage. I don't see the stats to back it up. This is 6 months ago. Well, this is a guy who was a co-founder of Apogee, and he says, yeah, it's bad. He says, dead, Jim. Just a matter of time. Bluesky will have to make radical changes, which will surely upset their current users. And you can see the numbers. Bluesky user growth and active users. We've got daily users on Bluesky down 3.1%. Daily posters down 2.7%. Daily posts on Bluesky down 2.4%. See, let's go out and look at this chart here. Yeah, everything's in the red. And, we have a lot of interesting political things going on in the world right now that you think that these people would be all about. And the usage is going down. And even left-wingers are agreeing that Bluesky is toxic. There were several websites talking about how bad things were in Bluesky and how journalists were moving back to Twitter, even though they didn't agree with all the right-wingers being over there. They didn't want to be on Bluesky because everything they said was a microaggression. And I'm like, look, it's just the chickens coming home to roost. Like this is the culture you perpetuated on Twitter, and you guys were on the right side of history, and you were joining in on these lynch mobs, this cancel culture, and now you're getting a taste of it. And it doesn't taste very good, does it? Doesn't taste very good. But here are some of the responses to George Broussard's post. Panta says, the problem is ironically a combination of toxic user base, deterring newcomers, and too strong of moderation tools, preventing healthy disagreements. I heard there wasn't any moderation over there, really. So you spend all day hell banning toxic accounts, but ideally you'll want a mild Twitter-style block used sparingly on occasional toxic content. Both sides should demilitarize, but how do you make that happen? George says, I don't disagree with your assessment. I also do not think it's fixable. Bluesky's fundamental issue is they really offer nothing new unless you just want a smaller, isolated echo chamber that bans everyone. It'll be interesting to watch, but I think I've seen enough to predict a muted future for the platform. The guy they put in charge is from Automatic. What I think will probably happen, this is my personal prediction. I'm just guessing. But what I think will probably happen, just like Automatic bought Tumblr, I think they'll buy Bluesky, even though Jay Graber said before Bluesky wasn't for sale. Well, when you've got no money, you're for sale, right? I think they will buy Bluesky and make it part of WordPress or something. And then you could actually install your own micro blogging app or whatever. You have your own personal Twitter. And that actually, for these people, that'd be fantastic. That should be fantastic for the world, because these people will go off and create their own social media network, and it'll be small and isolated, and in quarantine away from the rest of us so we don't have to deal with their bullshit. So let them go start their own little private corner of the internet. Actually, I advocate for that. I've said before, I think the way things are going right now with social media, I think we really need to look into bringing private forums back and stuff like that just to get away from the engagement bait. And that's what it is. And social media right now, what they do is they throw you in front of somebody who is diametrically opposed to your point of view to get that engagement because they know you're going to get in a fight. They want you to get in a fight, right? So I guess having a half-dead forum in some dusty corner of the internet's preferable to having these people constantly start fights, right? Deep Night Game says, I'm not in line with this idea of a social network should always grow or die. Since the X explosion, I'm no longer looking for a marketing tool with potentially unlimited audience. I'm now okay with the fact that communities I follow are basically limited groups of people. That's true. There is no such thing as infinite growth. You're going to hit a ceiling. There are only so many people on the planet. Well, full stop. There are only so many people on the planet, but there are only so many people on the planet that are willing to buy your product or interested in your product, and that is it. And what businesses need to do, and this is the biggest mistake these corporations are making, they need to focus on sustainability. What levels, how much money do we have to bring in to stay at the current level? Pair people fairly and just, I'm not saying tread water, make a profit every year, but like we're not going to have record profits every damn year, because then the expectation is every quarter you're going to have record profits. You're not going to have a down quarter because the investors get mad. So you're better off being a private company and being like, you know what, we roll with the punches just like it used to be. Mom and pop hardware store or something like that. They had their good years. They had their bad years. And as long as they were sustainable and could stay in business, maybe they have to lay a couple people off here and there just because things weren't great. There was a downturn in the nut and bolt business or something that year, whatever the deal was. But then, a year or two down the road, they'd be fine because, people want paintbrushes now. We got all kinds of paintbrushes. And I think businesses need to do that. And nobody does that now. It's all record profit, or the business is started by someone and they position themselves to get sold to a corporation that'll gobble them up, take whatever assets they think are worth it, strip mine, scrap the rest of it, strip mine out of it what they want. And that's not good either. So George says he agrees on newsletters. They said basically I'm okay with newsletters, whatever. Second, it's all case dependent. You've had enough success, you likely don't care, right? Younger devs starting out might want access to a potentially larger audience where someone shares your game. The post gets 500,000 views. That happens here, never on Bluesky. I don't think we really disagree, but it's interesting to note where people are in their needs and timelines. Yeah, if you're looking to promote your stuff, Bluesky is not the place to go. Also, they hate capitalism over there, full stop, too. A lot of them. So it's like, wait, you want me to pay you for your thing? Did you use AI? So it's crazy. Richard Brown says the trouble being if they make radical changes, it becomes a shit show like this place. Yeah. George says this isn't a shit show, though. He's talking about X. Unless you want to control everyone and what they say. It's easy enough to follow accounts you like and just mute and block people. No more needs to be done. Gets better every few months. It's extraordinarily better than before. I would agree with that. I don't like X overall. I'm going to be honest. I've been posting more over there. I don't like it overall because it is kind of a shit show. It is, like I said, it's just a giant open forum. And they do throw you in front of people that they know you're going to have a problem with for engagement. But of all the options out there, it's probably the best one. If you actually want to get seen, you want to get your stuff found, it's still the best option. Gets better every few months. It's extraordinarily better than before, unless you want to stifle speech you don't like. I just block rude trolls and stay out of politics and have a reasonably nice time. So this is interesting too. This was just a couple days ago coming from Bloomberg. They said Bluesky needs to burst its American bubble. And they're talking about how on X now we've got all these Japanese accounts talking to all these Western American accounts, English accounts. And I've been talking to some Japanese people too. And it's amazing because you get kind of a distorted view. If you listen to the media, you get a very distorted view of where people actually are, right? But they're saying they need to get rid of the language barrier. I'm going to tell you, if you start bringing people in from overseas, from Japan, or I don't think China would be allowed to, because China, they're pretty locked down over there. But Korea, obviously not North Korea, South Korea, Japan, Philippines. I'm sure you probably got people in the Philippines using it. You bring them over into Bluesky or try to pull them into Bluesky, that's going to be fireworks, because judging by what a lot of the Japanese accounts on X are saying, Japan's a lot more conservative than people want to admit. They might have some crazy ass anime and video games and stuff like that, but overall, most of the people I've talked to on Japan, on the Japan side, they are definitely more conservative leaning. It seems like the country overall is fairly conservative compared to, Portland. I guess most places probably are compared to Portland. I don't think it's going to go well. I don't think it's going to go well for them. I think that the Japanese would come in and be like, oh my God, these people are like beyond parity, and they would turn around and run the other way, right? That's just my personal opinion. But Bluesky, they were revolting just a couple days ago. We talked about that. They had this AI tool, and the tool actually was pretty innocuous. It actually was a good use of AI, in my opinion. It was curating your feed. So if you didn't want politics, you could just say, hey, I just want kitten videos or music videos or whatever. But like even big accounts on Bluesky, if you go out to those accounts, like, okay, so just for example, the Hollywood Reporter, you go to X, the Hollywood Reporter could have, a couple 100,000 views on a post and a whole bunch of retweets. You go to Bluesky, you might get like 5 comments because nobody gives a shit and nobody's over there. It's a ghost town. So yeah, I agree with the assessment. Can we admit that Bluesky is a catastrophic failure? According to Reddit, it's a lousy version of Twitter, and Twitter already fucking sucked to begin with. Are we seriously going to pretend this is not a complete failure while it's collapsing at the seams? Are we all in desperate need of more Twitter? Some people are. I'm going to wrap it up. Please subscribe. We'll talk later.